Yo, what's up everyone, Mr Premps here, and in today's video we're taking a look at Mihawk and what it truly means to be a swordsman in One Piece. So if you want to find out more about what it takes to be the greatest or strongest swordsman, how Mihawk attained this, and even power scaling Mihawk against Shanks, keep watching the video. Now before I get started, as usual, make sure you like the video as it helps me out so much with that YouTube algorithm. And make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can remain up to date whenever I, Mr Premps, drop more content just like this. So first and foremost, I think we have to look at Mihawk's title of being the world's strongest swordsman. And just as a disclaimer, I'll be using the terms strongest and greatest interchangeably, as the Viz does use the greatest. However, those who have read the original Japanese scans suggest that the translation would mean strongest. But at the end of the day, we all know exactly what I mean. So back to Mihawk's title. The first issue I have is where this title originates from. In the story so far, these titles have been used for three people, and that's Mihawk as the swordsman, Whitebeard as the strongest man, Kaido as the strongest creature. So who exactly gives out these titles? Is it other pirates? Is it the world government? Or is it Big News Morgan, because we all know the influence that he holds? Just look at what he did with Luffy at Whole Cake. And the answer, I believe, is a combination of them all, because the title of the world's strongest was not just handed out recently. It clearly has been a title that's been out there for a while. It just so happens it has more recently found its way to Mihawk. We know Ryuma once held the title, and this was actually confirmed by Oda in the Wanted series, which is a collection of 5 manga one-shots that Oda produced prior to One Piece. So taking that into consideration, with the addition of a bit of headcanon, I believe Kazuki Oden may have held the title at some point. Now before you all go killing me in the comments, I want you all to think about it. Wano is known as the land of samurai, and it's confirmed that Ryuma, who was a samurai from Wano, had the title of the world's strongest. And I personally believe that this title was inherited over time within Wano until Oden left. Now at the time that Oden left Wano, there was no samurai there that could compete with him. Now here's where some more headcanon gets involved, and I think it should be considered. I believe with Oden's death there was a void left in regards to the title, where certain stipulations would have to be met in order for someone to hold the title. Something which was known by an apprentice or cabin boy on Roger's ship that Oden referred to as his first son Shanks. Which leads me onto a more recent conversation that Shanks and Whitebeard had, talking about Mihawk's strength. Whitebeard talks about the stories that have been told about Mihawk and Shanks' duels, which were truly legendary. Now in terms of timescales for these duels, this definitely occurred around 12 or more years ago, which would be prior to Romance Dawn, which is chapter 1. And the reason I say this is due to Mihawk being uninterested in fighting Shanks since he lost his arm. Mihawk reminded us of this at Marineford when Shanks arrived and he walked off explaining he was not there to fight Shanks, which leads a lot of people to believe and state that Mihawk is stronger than Shanks and stronger than Yonko level since Shanks became a Yonko only around 6 years ago. However, this is where I disagree and get a lot of hate, and the best way for me to explain this is through sport. So those of you who know a little bit about football, or some of you might call it soccer, you might have heard of a man named Cristiano Ronaldo. Now Ronaldo is undoubtedly one of the 2 greatest football players to have ever lived on the planet Earth. In my personal opinion of course, and quite frankly by his accolades. But there's a clip which shows him covering 96 meters in around 10 seconds on a football pitch, suggesting that he is truly a speed demon. But how does this relate to Shanks and Mihawk? Well, let's imagine 12 years ago that Shanks was a young Cristiano Ronaldo and not at his footballing peak, and Mihawk was a very accomplished sprinter aiming to be the fastest man in the world, with Shanks as his main competition, so much that maybe Shanks himself dreamed of becoming the world's fastest man. Mihawk and Shanks could have had many races over the years, tight races where they have gone back and forth on who actually won, until the day that Shanks got injured. At this point, Mihawk's only challenger, who was Shanks, is no longer a challenge to him, as the damage caused by his given injury doesn't allow him to be as fast as he once was, and therefore Mihawk no longer sees him as competition. However, if we take this back to the story, does this mean that Mihawk is now stronger than Shanks? And the answer to that is no, because like the example I gave, Shanks' strength was not only his swordsmanship, just as Ronaldo's strength is not just his sprinting. The fact that Ronaldo can sprint is just a tool in which he has. However, his main sport is football. Just as some may say LeBron James could play American football, I truly believe that Shanks is a truly skilled swordsman. However, that isn't his only strength. We've seen the likes of Katakuri's advanced observation haki, Oden's advanced Ryo, so who knows what sort of unique ability that Shanks holds. And that's not to downplay Mihawk at all, as I truly believe that he is indeed Yonko level. But as we all should know by now, that the title of Yonko does not come so easily. There are external factors that must be taken into consideration, such as crew capability, territory, and influence, just to name a few. All that Mihawk holds little to none of from what we know in the story so far. But could Mihawk defeat Shanks in a sword fight? Most definitely. But in an all-out fight, who knows who will win? Well, Oda must. So now we know that Mihawk no longer has any challengers. Does that just give him the title of strongest? Well, that's something I'm very unsure of. Another thought that I had, which would completely negate what I said earlier in regards to the likes of Oden holding the title, actually links in with my thoughts that in order to attain the title of the world's strongest swordsman, certain conditions are met, and in particular, one of those conditions could be attaining the Black Blade, in which Mihawk has spoken about before. So far in the story, if my memory serves me correctly, there are only 2 men to have attained the Black Blade, well, that we know of, and that's Ryuma and Mihawk, both who we know have held the title, and this is likely or almost a guaranteed feat that will be required by Zoro on his journey to surpass Mihawk. The last thing I want to touch on very quickly is who else was really challenging for the title of strongest swordsman. I find so many people talking about this character's a swordsman or that character's a swordswoman, and although I may not agree, it makes me think, well, has Mihawk actually fought them? And if so, did he win? For example, in Whole Cake Island, we saw Big Mom use Napoleon as a sword, which led to so many fans saying, oh my gosh, Big Mom is a swordswoman. However, I wouldn't necessarily agree. I believe she has the ability to use a sword, as we saw with her Elbaf spear. However, does that make her a swordswoman, and do we believe that Mihawk could beat her in a one-on-one? Well, maybe if it was strictly a sword fight. However, as I mentioned earlier, Big Mom has so much more going for her. Her sword is just a tool in which she uses. Other people I would like to know whether Mihawk has fought are the likes of Vista and other up and coming swordsmen. And of course Vista isn't the greatest example, as Mihawk almost completely disregarded him at Marineford and was only interested in Whitebeard. But we've seen characters like King with a sword, suggesting he too is a swordsman, and it makes me wonder whether he has fought Mihawk too, or even Fujitora. We know Fujitora only received his Devil Fruit quite recently, and so most likely was a skilled swordsman before attaining this. Had he faced Mihawk before becoming an admiral? I guess there's so many questions and a lot of holes in the story to suggest that Mihawk has gained his title through having endless amounts of sword fights. And I don't believe that we should look at every character who wields a sword as strictly a swordsman or swordswoman. Because yes, they wield a sword, but is their goal or their focus strictly on being the most skilled with a sword? I know I'll probably get a few people questioning my opinion, because they want to hold Mihawk to the highest of standards. And honestly, I don't blame you. But one thing I'll raise is that things aren't always what they seem, and it always reminds me of a video done by Brago named Perception vs Reality. And the reason I say this is because if we look at Whitebeard at Marineford, he was most definitely past his peak and unlikely to be the strongest man. I look at Wano and we might see some flaws in Kaido. So by the time we find out about Mihawk, let's hope he doesn't let us down and he lives up to the expectations that we have for him. But honestly, let me know what you all think. I'm really keen to get your thoughts, and what do you think it means to be a swordsman or a swordswoman, and how do you think Mihawk attained his title? Do you think there's a specific reason? And if so, why? Now as usual, if you like anything I've had to say, please make sure you leave a like on the video. And if you would like to see more content just like this, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss out when I drop more gems just like this. Safe.